the best vegetable for men? When we look at what men are mostly concerned with, whether they are young, middle-aged, or old, a lot of times it is that overall kind of testosterone to estrogen ratio. Now, I'm not going to go out there and say that a certain vegetable is going to increase testosterone or anything like that. What I am going to focus on is estrogen, and not estrogen as a whole, but the different kinds of estrogen. We need to expand our thought when we look at estrogen, because some estrogens are actually good and some estrogens are very bad. When it comes down to a male, we really have to be paying attention, because the estrogens are what can drive the aromatization of testosterone into more estrogen, sending us down this vicious cycle of just more and more estrogen and less testosterone. It's not necessarily about how do we increase our testosterone levels, it's more about how do we keep things in check and improve our estrogen ratios. Now, I'm not talking about testosterone to estrogen ratio, that's important too, but I'm talking about good estrogen to bad estrogen ratio. And this is exactly where sulfur-containing vegetables really do play a role. And even if you're not consuming sulfur-containing vegetables, possibly consuming things like indole-3-carbinol or DIM, diindole methane, which you can find in stores, you can find in the supplement stores, but honestly, vegetable route is probably the best. Let's go ahead and break it down. Simply put, a sulfur-containing vegetable is going to be something like broccoli, something like cabbage, something like cauliflower, something like bok choy, something like brassica, anything kind of within that cruciferous category. I tend to lean towards broccoli and bok choy because the concentration of that is pretty high. But anyway, let's get into how this works, because it's very important. There is something in these vegetables called glucosinolates. Okay, these glucosinolates are components that break down into indole-3-carbinol, which further breaks down into diindole methane. What diindole methane does, even though it's a very complicated sounding term, it's really just DIM, what DIM does is it metabolizes the bad estrogens so that we can excrete them and get rid of them. But it actually helps the good estrogens become stronger, thereby increasing the ratio of our good estrogen to bad estrogen. Now, it does this via a cool pathway. It does this by upregulating an enzyme in our liver. This enzyme is called CYP1A2, and it is the job of this enzyme to take the metabolism of estrogen and either expedite it or slow it down. So if that enzyme is upregulated, you're breaking down the estrogen faster. Now, additionally, it can downregulate another enzyme. It downregulates an enzyme called CYP1B. The enzyme isn't that important, but basically in terms of the name, but what this B1B does is it makes it so that stronger estrogen molecules become weaker, so that the CYP1A2 can therefore break them down better. So it's a pretty complicated sounding system, but estrogen is actually a very complicated molecule. It's a complicated hormone. So the long story short is that diindole methane increases the availability of what's called 2-hydroxyestrogen and decreases the availability of 1,6-hydroxyestrogen, the bad estrogen. The 2-hydroxyestrogen is a very good estrogen, and whether you are male or female, it is having cardioprotective effects, brain protective effects, neuroprotective effects, potential anti-inflammatory effects, and even effects that can be beneficial towards your appetite, beneficial towards your body composition. It is by and large a good estrogen. Estrogen gets thrown under the bus a lot. Estrogen itself is good. It provides some joint relief. It can actually help you so your joints don't feel so bad. It can help with hydration. It is literally a good thing, but it gets tossed into the ring along with 1,6-hydroxyestradiol, which in essence is almost a poison. We are supposed to have a small amount of it, but we need to be able to deal with it. And the liver has to go into hyperdrive to try to process it. So when we upregulate these enzymes by consuming these kinds of vegetables, it does help that process out. And again, you don't have to do the vegetables. I recommend you do because you get a benefit there, but you can take a few hundred milligrams of diindole methane or indole-3-carbinol. If you're trying to make the biggest impact with your hormones outside of, say, lifestyle, stress, sleep, vitamin D, sunlight, things like that, when you're coming down to a nutritional aspect of things, I'm still going to go out on a limb and say that vegetables are probably good. And I've been an advocate for cruciferous vegetables for a very long time because as far as male health goes, it probably is the most bang for the buck. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.